Welcome to episode 20 of the Lily List podcast, where our goal is to be a handbook for the living. In this inspiring conversation, we catch up with Nancy Dillingham, whose journey from a successful corporate career to becoming a passionate glass artist and business owner is a testament to her resilience, creativity, and self-discovery. Nancy shares how she found her artistic voice later in life, built a thriving studio, Glass Arts Collective, and the lessons she learned along the way. This episode is packed with wisdom about redefining creativity, embracing second acts, and making a meaningful impact through art and community. Whether you're looking to make a career shift, reignite your creativity, or simply hear a heartfelt story of transformation, this episode has something for you. As always, visit lilylist.com for more information on the podcast and platform. You can also contact us from the website if you have questions or ideas for people or topics you'd like to see us cover in the future. If you'd like to support the work of Lily List, you can donate using the links in the description, and if you find these conversations meaningful, we thank you for liking, following, sharing, or subscribing wherever you listen. Nancy Dillingham, thank you very much for joining the Lily List podcast. I was very much interested in speaking with you after I saw your shift from your corporate career into your artistic career. I have a friend that's sort of followed a similar path. So I'm very interested in hearing about that. But here on the podcast, I like to start off a little bit earlier in life. So your childhood, where you grew up, what was your family life like? And were there any impactful things that guided you maybe into your corporate career? Maybe they guided you away from that corporate career, but anything that kind of imprinted on you while you were coming up?
I had a very amazing childhood. My dad was a college professor in social psychology, and I spent 10 years, first few years we moved around a little bit. He was at Cornell when I was born, getting his PhD, and ended up in Bloomington, Indiana. After X number of years, he was eligible to have a sabbatical, which college professors used to get. Third grade was in Israel. We traveled throughout Europe for a month and then Israel for a year and a month on the way back. I was fluent in Hebrew in second grade. And I just saw so much of the world and saw so many different types of people in different environments and backgrounds, all from a child's point of view. And it was amazing. We came back. I was still pretty much speaking fluent Hebrew because not a lot of people wanted to talk to a third grader in English. And in fourth grade in Bloomington, we actually had learned French. And so that was going to be my third language. And everything just automatically came out in Hebrew. And kids laughed at me. No one told them that this is a third language for her. And so I didn't have anybody else to speak Hebrew to, so I just dropped it like a ton of bricks. And I'm disappointed I did, but I totally understand why I did. I learned French. And so I was still speaking two languages. I definitely was better at Hebrew than French. And from there, we were there for a couple more years. And then Dad transferred to University of Massachusetts, Amherst. So you were in Boston and I was in Amherst areas. When I graduated high school, they went on another sabbatical. So instead of my leaving home when when I graduated, they left home and went to Belgium for a year. And back then there was no internet, there was no cell phones or anything like that. Our junior high school had a television studio in it, which was the local cable network. And I fell in love with that. That was where I found my passion. I remember one of my French classes in high school, instead of speaking in front of the class, I wasn't comfortable. Did it in the television studio.
Oh, wow.
And played it back on a TV in the classroom. My senior year, I taught television production to the fifth graders in the science department. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I loved all the kids because they were so excited to learn something different. And I was learning to put it into perspectives that made sense to them. I taught them about from a Super 8 camera, how to do animation in a very rudimentary form. That was what I wanted to do when I was in high school. I wanted to become involved with television production. When my parents had left home, I went down to Springfield and found the two primary television networks, studios. And one of them had, and I am so disappointed I never remembered his name, but he was so honest with me and so passionate about my understanding of what I'd been doing. And he said, "You're better than some of the directors we have here, but this is a union environment and it's going to be 20 years till you're going to be able to be behind the control." He said, "This isn't the right path for you." He said, "Not in public and commercial television network." And I really didn't want to hear that, but I really respected that. And the fact that someone could be so compassionate in the way he worded it to me and what he had to say. And so I recognized that that wasn't going to be a path I was going to do. And I wasn't really sure I was going to do. I just knew I wasn't really set up to be education. I loved teaching, but I didn't do well with the students that weren't interested. I only had one the whole time I was doing it. I only had one student that wasn't interested. She was disruptive. She was rude. The other kids were actually disciplining her more than I was, with telling her to shut up and do your own work. Don't copy us, that kind of thing. But I didn't have the skills to work properly with that. So I realized there was nothing really in the immediate area for me. And so I followed someone who I cared for very much at the time to around the country. So I've been to all 50 states.
Wow.
And we ended up in California. And I realized he wasn't who I thought he really was. He wasn't the supportive person I'd hoped he'd be. And I went to an employment agency. They had two jobs they were going to send me on because I really wasn't very skilled. I'd done kind of the department store type of business so far at that point. And one was for a gopher driving around Beverly Hills. And I'm like, oh, God, no. And the other was a clerk typist in an area that was very reasonable. So I went on that interview, was hired on the spot to start the next day. And that said, I'm staying in California. So I went to various businesses. They were all corporations. And I jumped around, not regularly, but I jumped around a little bit, jumped around within the companies. And I was very blessed I proved myself even without necessarily having a degree that was required or experience in a particular area. And people gave me a chance because I'd proven that I could learn and I was willing to do what needed to be done to get the job done. And so
Companies would take the time back then to actually train as well.
Well, people don't take the time in companies to train very much now, unfortunately. It's one of those things that I saw quite a bit through my career was a lot of people are promoted because they did a good job at one level, but it didn't mean they had the skill sets to be a supervisor or a manager. And they were never trained how to work with a union. It was very disappointing because an environment that could have been very positive for everyone was made negative because of the lack of training, not because the person was purposely doing things. They just didn't know any better. They were doing the best they could. And that took me a little while to learn that it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't that they really were jerks, but that they just didn't know any better. I learned a lot of lessons through the different corporations I worked for. But one of the things I did learn is how much I liked being a person who could make a difference. It didn't have to be a big difference, but when I saw something that wasn't right, my folks taught me it was okay to question things.
Yeah.
And so I would go and I'd question, why is this being done this way? It seems like it's the hardest way to do it. And I had many managers who were open to hearing that. And boy, I would do anything for them. Even if they had to say to me, unfortunately, there isn't anything else we can do. We're locked into this or whatever. They listened and they were open to hearing it. And that made all the difference in the job to me. And as I went up the totem pole in my career in business, I tried to be really good about that with employees. I was never really trained on how to be a supervisor or a manager either. So I tried to watch and observe how people reacted to me and stop and think about why I didn't necessarily get a positive response from what I thought I would. And so there was a lot of mindset changes I went through, I created for myself, but I wanted to be a better person. And boy, I made a lot of mistakes, and rarely did I ever have anyone say, hey, this would have been a better way to have handled that. But I did apologize to people, and they were open to that, which I appreciated. For when I realized that I had really done something incorrectly.
Yeah.
So I go through my career. I end up, my first marriage didn't make it, unfortunately, but I have a wonderful daughter. And I met my second husband while I was working at IBM. I actually had a tech background, infrastructure. I was at Sony Pictures IT department for 10 years, budgeting, forecasting, administration work. And my husband said, if you're going to be selling technology, that's what my company does, the infrastructure of technology. He said, you should be working with me. And I'm thinking, I've heard a lot of stories about husbands and wives working together and it not working. And do I want to take that chance? And you know what? I believed we could make it work. And we did. Did we have bumps in the road? Oh, yes. But we worked on clearly defining our roles. And so I was the chief operating officer, and I learned how to really run a smaller corporation business. And he decided it was time to retire. And I said, I'm not ready to retire. So through all of this, I believed I wasn't creative. I tried doodling, music, writing, painting, ceramics, knitting, sewing, woodworking, lots of different things, and nothing really stuck with me. So I had the mindset that I wasn't creative. So when I decided, what am I going to do next? I was stuck, and that was pretty scary. My folks relocated from Massachusetts out here so I could help take care of them. And there was a class being taught on about fused glass, and I'd never heard of it. So I decided I don't care if I'm good or not. Mom doesn't care if I'm good or not at what I'm doing. I'm going to take a class and I'm going to have something else to do with her because I loved my parents. I loved everything about their support, and I want to be doing something else with her at this age too. And I fell head over heels in love with the product. It's only about 50 years old, and it was created by some amazing engineers up in Portland, Oregon. The company's Bullseye Glass company that I work with now. I found my creative outlet. And so when my husband retired, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, I had this studio that I was going to for classes, and they closed the branch that I was working with. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I go to my husband, and he goes, I know how passionate you are about it. Everybody knows how passionate. He goes, but you can't have the garage. I went, oh no, like your friend who started in the kitchen and then went to the garage and then went to the basement. I didn't have that option. We don't have basements out here very much. He came around to me and said, hey, you know how to run a small business. Open your own. Now, at this point, I've been in business much longer than I've been in glass.
Yeah.
And so I talked to my friends I had been taking classes with, and we all agreed if I could create the business and run the business, they'd help me teach classes. And I was like, wow, what a win-win situation. And so Glass Arts Collective was born. We took ownership of the studio. I mean, it's my business, but I say we because my friends have all become my board of directors. And we opened the studio 5 weeks before COVID hit.
Yeah.
So we had an interesting start of the journey and start of the business, very abnormal. And you know what? We're still here and we're stronger than ever.
Yeah, congrats to that.
Long story for my background.
No, that's good. It's funny, thinking that you were not creative because sitting and listening to the steps the path that you took, first off, just being a polyglot, right? So there's a certain level of, call it creativity or not, but at least organization to hold multiple languages in your head at the same time. I mean, there's plenty of research that shows how powerful that is for people to speak multiple languages and how it really helps with thinking through problems. But then it just sounds like you've been problem solving your whole life, going back to your parents heading out and you managing your life. And figuring out. There's a lot of people where that first TV experience you had when somebody said it's going to be 20 years before you get into the position you want to be in, there's a lot of people that would just say, well, that's the way it is, and push forward, right, for better and worse. So I think at the very least, you've shown plenty of creativity in problem solving and moving yourself forward into positions that you want to be in. And so I think, as you said, it was finding that artistic thing that you connected with.
You're absolutely right. And it's easy to see that now.
Yeah.
I'm a good armchair quarterback, but I didn't at the time. And it's amazing to me how much you can tell yourself something and believe it. It doesn't mean it's true, but the more you say it, the more you believe it. And it suddenly becomes your truth. And people go, there is only one truth. Well, everyone has their own truth. And you can look at me and tell me, I would tell my 17-year-old self very different things than I would of when I was 17. That's for sure.
Yeah. Anybody that says there's only one truth, I always ask them to define truth.
Well, it's the same thing as define creativity and define artistic. So it's different for everyone, and obviously my interpretation at the time was mine, but I see it today, and I would say it was wrong. But that's
Yeah.
okay. It didn't stop me from doing any of the things I did, and maybe that's part of what made me strong in those areas because I didn't have a clear definition, so I kept going.
That's a very loose plan, but it's a plan for success in life. So, on that front, though, you're now 4 to 5 years in with Glass Arts Collective.
Yes.
What's been, I want to ask what's most challenging, but obviously going through COVID and keeping things rolling is a big challenge. But from challenging from the standpoint of where you came from, right? So you didn't know you were going to connect to glasswork. You just found it and went from there. But so you've got people that come in now, some of them probably just starting out, some of them more experienced. What's been most challenging dealing with growing the business and keeping it going with regard to the audience? And then what's been the biggest, I don't want to call it success, but the sort of most thing that's impacted you the most on a positive front with regard to audience and who you've been serving?
At the studio, we have a gift shop, we have classes, and then we have open studio membership. So I always knew when I was starting the studio that I was going to have those three things. What I didn't realize is how poorly I understood marketing. And
Really?
fused glass being something that isn't as well known was a huge challenge. And so it really became a word of mouth type of growth. During COVID, instead of sitting and whining about how horrible this is and woe is me, I realized that throughout my life, and especially with my daughter being a single parent, I always wished I'd had more time.
Hmm.
And I looked at this as a gift. I suddenly had more time. I suddenly had the time I've always wanted to have extra things I could do. So I took a lot of online classes and practiced a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. I learned more from mistakes than I do from the successes. And I really grew much more of an understanding of what glass is going to do and appreciation for the fact that glass has its own stress level within it and the beauty of the colors. And as people started to find me, I learned about the mental health benefits of working with glass or with any type of hobby, how you can really sort of escape from what is on your mind and be able to refocus on something else with a clearer focus after a short period of time. And the relaxation that it created for me, it didn't even occur to me would create for other people too until I started seeing it and hearing it and they were telling me.
That's okay.
Yeah, I love teaching fused glass. And I would say in this almost 5 years of doing it now, I've only had one or two people who actually weren't interested in doing it, but they still did it and they still appreciated trying it. The people, I've got this wonderful, wonderful community of artists that work at the studio in the open studio program. I grew the studio realizing that they didn't have an outlet to sell their stuff. So I opened up the gift shop to them as well. So the gift shop at this point has 11 different artists in it. It's part of my website. So when I'm doing marketing and learning marketing, because I'm still taking classes, I'm still learning how to do things. I love it. They're included in all of that. And as things were going on, I realized that they didn't have a place to show their stuff. The local museums and galleries really weren't taking on unknowns. They never defined it. They just wouldn't return phone calls. So I created an artist of the month. They would have a table reception of all of their or whatever art they wanted to put out. And we'd have a reception for people to come meet them. And we'd have some refreshments to watch people come in and get to meet the artist. And the artist to meet people who are really enthusiastic and excited about their art. That's when I felt like I was a fly on the wall watching this incredible blooming of energy. They took over. I didn't have to do anything except maybe an introduction, if even that. And such a beautiful and inviting and warm thing to see. People walk into the studio here, and the first thing are into is the gift shop. And I'll get, oh my God, this is beautiful in here. Oh my God, how long have you been here? I didn't know you were here. I said, yeah, I'm a hidden gem that I'm trying to be found. So please spread the word. And they just laugh. And people have come and taken the class. And when they come back about a week later to pick up their piece because they have to put it in a kiln and fire it. And that's how it fuses the glass together. They'll come back and be so surprised that they could create something so beautiful. And they said, oh, I'll be back. I mean, I loved making something, but I was so calm and relaxed when I left. When I got home, I realized how relaxed I was after just taking one class with you. And I know where I want to go when I get stressed out now. And they'll come back and they'll laugh. Okay, de-stress time. And I just have so much fun. And there's no judgment. There's no like, oh my God, you didn't do it right. You should have done it this. There's none of that in here. I teach techniques and I teach the safety of working with glass and I teach different techniques. There's an introductory class. That's the only required class. After that, go the direction you want to go. Go which way you want to go. And that's what I did as a path. And for those people that's too loose, then we talk about what they'd like to do next and we put together a program for them. So we do it what works for each person. And there is no right or wrong. And I just love this. This is such a passion for me now. And I work with schools. I work with the local community. I belong to more organizations and get to do more to help the community in general. I would not have, my 17-year-old self would not have seen me here. But boy, my 17-year-old self would be so proud of me.
Yeah, great. So no one will confuse me for Oprah or Barbara Walters as an interviewer. So I probably should have asked this much earlier on, but as you were talking, you touched on it, but you refer to it as fused glass. How does fused glass differ from, say, blown glass, or what other types of glass creation there is?
It is, so blown glass is considered hot glass. It's done in front of a 2,000 degree blowhole. And you have to know the steps well. You can't stop and go, what do I do next? So you have a flow that has to keep going and you can't stop and just relax, take your breath, whatever. Stained glass is considered cold glass. It doesn't get heated up. It is very concise cuts, a lot of grinding to make everything fit perfectly. And whether you use copper foil or you use cane, you have to be pretty exact in what you're doing and to have it all fit and stay together and stay secure. Fused glass, which is the newest sort of the family, is in between. It's considered warm glass. I question that to a certain degree. We make everything at room temperature. It's pretty much made flat when you first make it. So you're taking a piece of glass. We usually use clear for most of the classes, and you pile on pieces that you cut or that are already fine, that are broken. We reuse all the glass. So there's no waste at all, which is really something that I inspired to as well. And it's then taken to the kiln. And I run my kilns after hours so that the electric rates are lower and we're saving electricity and not putting a strain on the grid. And it heats up between 14 and 1500 degrees for the first firing. And we're not here. We're relaxing. Those kilns are programmed. I leave. Don't worry about them. They're very well contained. They're not anywhere near anything that's combustible. There's not like a pile of paper next to them or anything that's going to burn. If heaven forbid there was a hiccup. So we come back, and in the morning we open the kiln. It's down to room temperature again, and it's like Christmas morning. All this color and sparkle. The glass is softened. The edges are all softened. There's no rough spots anymore. It's beautiful. And you just get so excited. There's a routine here that everyone gathers around to watch the opening of the kiln. Even if it's not their stuff, they want to see everybody else's stuff too. And they're like, oh, wait a minute. No, I'm not quite ready. And they just laugh at me. And then I'll open it, and there'll just be all these oohs and ahs of other people's work or their own. And it's a lot of fun. With fused glass, you can then fire it multiple times. So I know that we're just doing audio, but a picture would be, if you were to visualize it, a bowl or a platter or a piece of wall art that has some dimension in it, can be fired again and created in a mold, additional shape. And so most of the glass is food safe. So it can be used every day in the kitchen. They're great gifts. Platters and serving pieces are terrific gifts for someone to have for that special occasion. We will do commission work. So if you saw something on our website but it wasn't the right color palette, just contact us and we're happy to do it in the colors that would be for you or a gift that you want to give. So it's an amazing environment. I actually don't talk about it right away because not everyone's going to be able to come to my studio. Not everyone's going to be able to find a studio near them, but there are studios all over the world that do fused glass, and it's fascinating. But I think what's I've realized is how important having something, whether it's playing music, whether it's telling stories, whether it's dancing. I mean, it's an endless thing of possibilities. Doodling, something to help you relax and find that peace within you is so critical and so important. Mine is fused glass, and there's a lot of people here associated with a studio that's fused glass. And again, my gift shop is only shipping throughout the United States at this time, but we have over 700 items there. So there's a good chance you're going to find something that you like. There is only one or two of the artists that make the same kind of thing. They're not all exactly the same. They're all different, but similar types of things. Otherwise, there are so many different techniques and color choices and palettes and designs because everyone does it differently. And it just opens up the floodgates of overwhelming, but at the same time, just going through the gift shop and looking at it is really relaxing and gives you a little zen as well. Instead, you can't get to a museum right now, just go through our gift shop. You'll have a good example of what can be done, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, as you said, this is audio only, but of course, we're talking on Zoom. I can see your background with all these great pieces, but we will have links that point to where people can get to your gift shop as well. But having said that, you've had quite a journey so far, and you've still got quite some journey left. Talking with you, seeing your passion, seeing that you're still in good physical shape, right? Mentally, you're all still there. What are you looking at in the short term? What do you want to accomplish? What's your focus? But then how do you think about legacy, or are you thinking about legacy?
The first part of that is what do I see in the future? And the future, I see growing the gift shop more to being international as well, to those countries that we can ship to. The idea of having a handcrafted gift is so much nicer than just going to the mall and buying something that's made in China. So I'm excited that there is such diversity in all of that. My legacy, I would say, has already started building, and I can make a difference in someone's life. Even if it's just a little bit, I am making a difference in more and more lives. And that is pretty phenomenal. And I'll rephrase that to I'm making a positive difference in people's lives. And it's something that I guess I didn't understand would be happening when I started all of this. I didn't realize the impact what I've created would be. I do understand that my passion is felt by everyone who comes in. And it's a big difference when you go into a store and people don't even want to look you in the eye. They don't even want to talk to you. And all they care about either is just selling you something or waiting for you to get out of there so they can get back on their cell phone or on the computer and play. So I think that I've taught my daughter the value and importance of quality of life, of treating people with respect. We went through several different things when she was ready to go into her life of business while she was in high school and what she should do. And it really helped. And I see where she is already in her life. She is just starting her 18th year at the same business.
Wow.
And the impact she makes and the things that she's learned and how she's helped other people, all of that to me is part of my legacy. And I'm really proud of it. I mean, I don't wish it, but if my life were to end, I don't have regrets. I really believe that I have done amazing things in my life, but I know there's other stuff coming. I don't know what it is yet, but I do know I have more to give and more to do. And so I am so excited to find out what that is.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think I know the answer to this given your experience in business, what you just said about your daughter. But in America, of course, part of our messaging communication, there's a legal component to it and wills and medical proxies and all that sort of stuff. And I'm taking a guess you've got all of that in place at this point.
Oh, yes. My parents have both passed in the last 2 years, and they had all of their estate planning and everything done. And it didn't resonate with me until a few years ago when I started to see the decline in my dad, who passed at 95. My parents have been incredible inspirations and role models. And I see my daughter has appreciated that as well. She got to meet her great grandmother, my mom's mother, and had a relationship with her. It's our family and extended family has been pretty amazing people. And paying attention to what you like in people and what you don't like, and taking the good, but not shaming the bad, is a really important life lesson.
Yeah, it's great. And maybe just as important is the question of, are you going to find opportunities to dig up all the languages that you speak?
It's so funny that you said that, because I was actually looking at these online products to help you learn languages. And I've been thinking about that would be something that would be really nice to get back into, and speaking multiple languages and probably even speaking different languages than I originally learned. I always feel bad when I can't communicate well with somebody because I don't speak their language. I have never felt that someone else had to speak my language.
Yeah.
And I respect that so much. So, yes, it's so funny that you asked that question, because I absolutely am looking at taking that on next.
Well, I was thinking if you want to expand Glass Arts Collective, Paris wouldn't be a bad spot.
You are absolutely correct. And oh my gosh, I can't believe you used Paris specifically. And the reason being is we just had a guest here for about a month who was here on business, and she had free time in between things, and she was coming in here. And so she was trying to find a place in Paris to do glass, and she couldn't find one that did fused glass. Blown glass, yes, but not fused glass. And I have a cousin that lives in Paris, and they're in walking distance of each other.
Yeah.
The fact that you just brought that up, I mean, she was so much fun to have here, and she's going to go back and probably open up her own studio, because it's missing in Paris itself.
It's a opportunity for expansion and to reach more people.
Absolutely.
Well, anything that you would like to call out?
Well, our studio and gift shop and the classes are all registration is online for the classes at glassarts with an S collective.com. We do teach stained glass and mosaic. We're looking for new instructors right at the moment. And I think we found the stained glass instructor. We're just going through the testing process to make sure skill sets are where we need it to be and understanding safety. We expanded from the beginning, but because of COVID and people moving out of state, we've lost a couple of our teachers. It is a lot of fun. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and we love feedback. We love what people think. We love hearing from people. And if anyone just wants to reach out and learn more about it, contact me at info@glassartscollective.com. And I am happy to respond and share.
Cool. Well, I thank you for your time. Next time I'm out on the West Coast, I'll swing by and
Please.
If you ever find yourself in Central North Carolina, feel free to reach out. Happy to have you and show you around. We have a number of friends that are into the building and art scene here. Of course, Greensboro is a small city. It's about 300,000 people, but there is a thriving arts community here. We actually have people that do glass work in the area. Should you ever find yourself out here, be happy to connect. This was a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate not only your journey, but your ability to be honest with yourself, understand who you are, and make decisions that then drive towards what you're looking to accomplish. So I think that that's something that's really important and sadly often overlooked by many of us because we feel like we can't do things, right? Or we don't have agency over those. So I think that's one of the big takeaways for me. And yeah, really appreciate your time. I know it's valuable.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to getting links to your music.
Oh,
So
it'll share out. And if you enjoy vinyl records, you send me your address.
I will do that.
All right. Well, thank you, Nancy.
You can't hang on to yourself. You don't have to try not to hang on to yourself. It can't be done. And that is salvation. The most important thing for anyone to realize is that you and every person you see will soon be dead.